Bhagavatam Vayaritarataschate Swavigyaswara Dena Brahma Hridaya Adikavai
Tejo Vari Madam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargam Isha
Tejo Varimrita Jata Vinimayo Jatra Tisragum Risu
Damna Srena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O all-pervading personality of Godhead,
O all-pervading personality of Godhead,
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful blessings.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
The creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested
Of the
universe.
creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations.
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
And
him.
he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It
him.
is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of
the original
Brahmaji.
living being.
The original living
By him,
being.
even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen in fire or land seen on water.
of water, sand, fire, land, seen in water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes.
temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of nature,
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
which is
world,
forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma
truth.
projita kaitravatra,
Dharma prajita kaitavut,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
paramo nirmashranam satam,
vedyam vastavam atravastu,
Vedyam vastavam astravastu,
sivedam tapa trayonmulanam.
Shivadam tapo trayomulanam,
Srimad Bhagavatam Mahamuni Krite,
Srimad Bhagavatam Mahamuni
Kimva Prayer
Kimva
Ishwara,
Pade Ishvara,
Sadyo Hridi Avarudhyate Cha,
Sadyo Rudya Varidya
Kriti Bihi Sususabhistakshana.
Kriti Shushushvistakana,
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activity which are material.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold.
This beautiful
miseries.
Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other
As
scripture?
soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively, submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of
by
knowledge,
this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within us.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukha mukhad amrita dravya samyutam,
Shuka mukhad vritadravasantam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Vivata bhavatam rasama,
muhur aho raska bhuvibhavaka.
Muraho risukab.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish
The mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit, the desired truth, the Vedic glory.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishwari.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become more
Although
tasty.
its nectarian juice was already relishable for
Although
all,
his nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shambhatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hiryantaksto hi abhadrani,
Yantasto Hyabhadani,
Vidunati Suhitsatam.
Viduno Tisuritsata.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad
is itself righteous activity.
Gita, itself righteous.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
and from who hears about Krishna.
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best-wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing friend,
and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body, constantly engages in
Nasta
hearing.
presu bhadresu
Nasta preshu bhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityam bhagavata seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistiki.
bhaktir bhavati nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental
As he
knowledge.
hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service to the Lord.
Tadarajastumo bhava
Dharajastamo bhava
kamalobodayaschaye
amalobhadayascha
cheta itar navidam
chitaitarana
stitvam sattve prasidati.
stitvam
By development of devotional
by development of
service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and this material lust and avarice.
Evam prasana manasu
Evam prasanamanas
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
bhagavad bhakti yoga
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
bhagavad
mukta sangasya jayate.
mukha sangha.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
and it is very steady in position of movement,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understand the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
chidyante sarvasamsaya
Jyante sarvasamsaya,
shiyante chasya karmani
Jyante chasakarmani,
drista evatmanisware.
Drusta evatmanishvara.
Thus bhakti yoga serves the heart not of material affection,
That's the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material
and
affection,
enables one to come at once to the stage of samsayam samagram,
and enables them to come at once to the stage of assumption samagrama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, verse number 35. Bhagavan sarva bhutesu
Bhagavan sarvabhuteshu
lakshita swatmana hari
lakshita swadmana hari
drisya buddhyadibir drasta
drisher buddhya dividrasta
lakshaner anumapakai.
lakshaner anumapakai.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being, along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. We're going to spend 2 days on this purport. It's a very important purport. And it explains how you can convince an atheist, a demon, a philosopher, or a pseudoscientist that Paramatma exists. It's an amazing purport, one that is very, very instructive to know. But if you like to sleep and eat and ignore coming to class and regularly reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, ignore this verse. It's not for you. But if you want to be an expert preacher, pay attention. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto him or render transcendental loving service unto him? This is often heard by people of bad faith who try and find excuses why they shouldn't hear Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam and spend more time reading mundane books all full of false conclusions. to such a common man, here is a practical suggestion given by Srila Sukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. So that's why in this verse it says, Dristai Buddhi Adi Bihi Drasta. Drasta means one who sees. Buddhi Adi Bihi by intelligence, and Dristai by what is seen. So you can understand what is seen when you see by intelligence. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present material senses, but when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is revelation by the Lord's mercy. And such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. So, what is emphasized? Practical service attitude. And what happens? There's revelation. Krishna gives you the knowledge. He reveals it to you because of our practical service attitude. That not only we have an attitude, but actually do the service on a regular basis. It can be arranging flowers, it can be cooking, it can be cleaning, it can be preaching, it can be going on Sankirtan, it can be book distribution. All these things are practical devotional service. It can be respecting prasadam. So many different practices of devotional service. So he says that such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality Godhead. Now, this is a very big statement because we have intelligence, but we also see there's a superior intelligence in the universe. How do we know that? Because everything is organized and functioning as if automatic. And there's order, and there's structure, and there's synchronization in the universe. That didn't get there by accident. And those people who think that or say that, not only they're fools and rascals, but they are demons who are trying to mislead young people and old people to think that there's no one behind the creation. It all happened by accident. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. Now, this is what he's going to prove by this process of reason and perception. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. This is a big statement. He's saying it's not difficult, even for a common man who's not a philosopher, who doesn't have a PhD, who's not a researcher, who's not doesn't write books, just an ordinary guy. Goes like ordinary Joe, goes to work every day, comes home, lives an honest life, visits the church or the temple, the synagogue or the mosque. Yeah, for that common man, it's not very difficult to realize the presence of Paramatma. The procedure is as follows. Okay, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 now. And to follow this and to understand how Prabhupada has constructed this, Prabhupada and the Acharyas have constructed this, is absolutely thrilling. Of course, not thrilling for most people because there's so much in ignorance they can't understand how important this is. But it's thrilling for devotees because they see, my God, I could convince anyone of the existence of God by this simple process of reason and perception. the procedure is as follows. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. So this is the beginning. If you get past this first point, the other 5 points will follow easily. So, what is the first point? You have to be convinced that you exist as a person. So, one time when I was explaining this in an assembly of people, I said, is there anyone in the audience that believes they are not a person? So some idiot raised his hand. You know. And I said, okay, sir, can you just come forward a little bit? He said, what for? I said, well, I'm going to borrow the chair that someone is sitting on and hit you over the head with it. He said, you're not going to do that to me? I said, that proves you're a person. Because I could hit this column, I could hit another chair, I could hit the floor, I could hit the rug, and they wouldn't say what you just said. But because you just said that, that proves that you are a person. They didn't say anything. He kept his mouth shut. Yeah, so if you accept that you're a person, then we can proceed to the other 5 points easily. It's the most important thing. And there are idiots that don't think they are persons. But you can easily prove to them they're a person when you run toward them with a chair in your hand to smack them on the head. He may not feel it very, he said, the procedure is as follows. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. Now this is a little more difficult. And you notice Prabhupada says that as soon as you feel that you're a person, and you identify yourself as a person and feel positive that you exist, he may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. Okay, now how do you prove to someone that they are not the body? Actually, it's not that difficult. When a person says, I am this body, you can ask the question, which body are you? What do you mean? What do you mean, which body? Well, are you the body of that little fish that came from your father into the womb of the mother? Would you deny that that was you at one point? He said, no, that was not me. That was a fish. No, that was you. Because all the information and technology to build your body was in that little fish. You said. And then, were you that emotion once the fish entered the ovum? Or were you that little pea with 9 holes in it? Or were you the little embryo with a head and a neck and shoulders and arms and legs? And by the way, where did the intellectual property of all that information come from? Right? Because your mother built your body without knowing how to do it. It all happened in her body without her knowledge. She knew that she may have been pregnant, but she didn't know how it's all happening, this miracle of a production of a living body. And then look how many times you've changed your body in this lifetime. So how can you say, I am this body? Which body are you? And you have no control over it. So obviously, this is explained as the seer and the seen. Somebody sees something, and what they see is not really the seer. It's the seen. Right? You see your hand. Well, you are actually different than the hand, although it's your hand. Right? Now, if you cut the hand off, you continue to exist. And you're still seeing the hand, but now it's not part of your body. You see? So whatever you look at is different than you, the seer. So someone said, wait a minute, how about the head? I can't see my head. Well, you can. You can look in a mirror. You'll see how ugly you are. So, again, there's the seer and the seen. So, well, what if I cut my head off? I don't see anymore. Well, actually, there's always a seer and there's always the seen. You may not see it because you're foolish enough to cut your head off, but someone else is seeing it. So there's always a difference between the seer and the seen. Anyway, the next point is one can positively feel that it exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, the head, etc., cannot be identified with his self. Why? Because they're always changing. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Okay, so that was one, and now number two. One is when it exists as a person. Two is, as a person, one is a seer. And whatever he sees is actually different than himself or herself. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of intelligence, we can readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or move independently. Okay, this is number three. Well, how do we know that? Well, everything that you're seeing, the power to see has been supplied to you or to us. You don't know how you got the eyes, the ears, the nose, the skin, the tongue. You're not controlling those senses. And you don't know how you got the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego. You say, whoa, I got it from my mom. No, not really. Your mom doesn't know how those things were produced. There was a third, there was another source of all that technical knowledge. Just like, let's say you buy a new car, and in the car is a manual that explains all the different parts of the car. And there's thousands of those parts, right? They sort of try and simplify it, otherwise you'd get totally bewildered by all the different parts. And they explain how to use the car with maximum, let's say, proficiency, without making mistakes. Like, for example, one time, my wife had a Mercedes car. Right? It was a long time ago. It was a rather new Mercedes. And she was driving it around, and I'd say about 2 or 3 months after she got it, the motor died. So the question was, how did that happen? It's a relatively new car, you know. So a mechanic came and looked at it and said, well, someone's been driving this car without oil in it. And I said to my wife, you didn't put any oil in the car? I said, you didn't tell me I had to put oil in the car. I said, what do you mean I didn't tell you? Everybody knows you have to put oil and you have to check it every once in a while. So, well, you didn't tell me, it's your fault. So anyway, so every machine that we have has a manual of use that comes with it, right? And there's a proper way of using the machine and maintaining it. There's an improper way of it, right? And the body is a machine also, right? Iswara sarvabhutanam hriday junatistati. Brahmayan yantri bhutani So this is a yantra. It's a machine. The body is a machine, and we have to know how to use it properly. Otherwise, we can mess it up, and it can get sick or it can die. So, therefore, we are not independent. That's what's being said here. Now, by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. Our senses of perception and of action, that is to say, our 5 perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste, smell, and as well as our 5 senses of action, namely hands, legs, speech, evacuation organs, and reproductive organs, and also our 3 subtle senses, namely mind, intelligence, ego, 13 senses in all, are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. So here Prabhupada's talking about natural energy. What does natural energy mean? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Those are natural, and that those 8 fundamental elements are expanded into 24. So there's 24 fundamental, let's say, energies by which all material things are made. That includes 5 senses, that includes 5 objects of senses, that includes 5 senses of action, that includes the 5 Mahabhutas elements, that includes the mind, intelligence, false ego, and that includes also the Mahatattva, the total material energy, right? And above that is the soul, and above that is the supersoul. So you have 26 energies or things that constitute a living being. The modern so-called scientists only study the 24. And even in the 24, they usually don't get to the subtle elements. They leave that up to the psychologists and psychiatrists, who are not really considered scientists, although they use that name. The hard science is chemistry. Physics is a little, let's say, under suspicion, because they come up with theories that you can't prove. But chemistry, it's, you mix this and that under this temperature and at this altitude, and you get this product. So it's more what you would call real hardcore science, as opposed to the soft sciences, and as opposed to the pseudosciences, according to the mundane people. But what we just explained, it says, all our ordinary actions and various, all our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. Our senses of perception and of action, that is to say, our 5 perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, as well as our 5 senses of action, hands, legs, speech, evacuation organs, and reproductive organs, and also our 3 subtle senses, namely mind, intelligence, ego, 13 senses in all. And then you have to add the 5 Mahabhutas, earth, water, fire, air, ether, 13 and 5, that means 18, are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion. In other words, all these energies are supplied to us. We didn't make them ourselves. We don't understand how they work and how they combine. We might have some elemental understanding of how it happens by reading textbooks and things like that. But to really understand fully, we don't. They're mysterious things that are happening. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses, as well as the objects of perception, are material. Okay, so that's a big stretch, that third point, but it requires intelligence, and you have to have examples that helps you understand these philosophical points. But it's not that difficult if you use reason and perception. So what basically he's saying is, look, you don't know how the body is made. You don't know how the body is functioning, really. There's so many things you and I don't understand about what is essential for our existence, right? And you don't know how all these things happen, or how they're being maintained, or how they deteriorate. You just perceive it. But some people say, oh no, I understand this or I understand that, but they don't have complete understanding. So therefore, it means that we are being controlled. We're not independent. We have to depend on so many things. Like, for example, if there's no light, then even though we have eyes, we wouldn't be able to see anything. So our seeing is dependent on light. And not only that, on the complex makeup of the eyes, and the connection of the eyes to that seeing to the brain, and then the perception that takes place is a mysterious thing. We don't understand how it's happening. I mean, scientists might give different explanations, but at a certain point you cease to really understand because it's so complicated, right? All right, so, and it's equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy, as this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion. That's the key right there. We don't have the independent power of perception or motion. And as we undoubtedly feel, and so how do you know that? Well, you could have an accident, and all of a sudden you break your spine or you break your neck. Now you can't move. So that proves that all along you were moving around and you were taking it for granted, but some little accident and all of a sudden you're stuck. And then sometimes they can't heal it. The doctors can't operate and help you because you're too broken. So that's how fragile we are. Therefore, we don't really have independent power of perception or of motion. And as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses, as well as the objects of perception, are material. Well, again, this is a further explanation of the seer and the seen. But the seer is obviously superior to what he's seeing, right? And like, for example, can your hand see? Can your nose see? Can your feet see? Well, to a certain extent, they have limited perception. Now, can your eyes see? Yes, but the seeing of the eyes is also limited, right? And can your intelligence see? Well, yeah, if it's a sharp intelligence, it can adjust things. Like, for example, when you see the sun, can you understand just by seeing it that it's 93 million miles away? Can you understand that is maybe several hundred times bigger than the Earth? No, because our seeing is limited in time and space. We are seeing, but it's not complete. Therefore, we need to get information from people who can see better than us. So the scientist, he has different proofs that the sun is 93 million miles away. You could not have guessed that just by looking at the sun with the raw eye. And that the sun is so many times bigger than the Earth. You could not have guessed that either. So there's always the seer and the seen, but there's always a superior seer. And eventually, that seeing is not related to simply a bodily function. There's some higher principle involved. Like, for example, someone dies, they don't see anything, right? They can't talk, their senses don't function anymore. So there was something in the body that permitted all these senses to work and the bodily functions to work. And that principle is not material, because when a person dies, they can inject the body with so many chemicals and electric shocks and this thing and that, it won't come back. So there's obviously something different than matter in the body. Otherwise, everybody knows earth, water, fire, air, ether. Everybody knows the table of material elements. Everybody knows so many different chemicals in the body. Why can't they bring the body back to life? Because the life principle is not material, it's spiritual. It's something that's different. Okay, so anyway, if you think about it, you'll eventually come to conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the objects of perception are material. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction. This is point 4. Like, for example, let's say you're in a golf tournament and there's all these big golf pros, and there's someone that's going to hit the golf ball now, and they have to get it into the hole in one strike in order to win. And they hit the ball, and it goes very close to the hole, and then it just misses. And everyone goes, oh, like that. But the ball doesn't go, oh, right? So why is everyone going, oh, and the ball doesn't say anything? Because there's something in the body that's perceiving, and now it's not satisfied. So dissatisfaction is the proof that there's a seer who is not material, because the ball didn't express any emotion at all. It just went there, and then it missed it. It didn't say, oh, you know. So in order to feel dissatisfaction, you need a soul. You need something that's not material. Like if you bang the wall, it doesn't say, stop, you know, because there's something not in that matter on the wall that's different than what's in your matter or my matter, the body. So you can understand the existence of the soul, something that is not material, because therefore it reacts, whereas material things, they don't react in the same way that a human being does. Okay, so they don't have dissatisfaction. So this is point 4. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between spirit and matter. Yeah, matter is matter revolting and saying, hey, we're limited. We don't like this. We want our freedom. No, the human beings, yeah, they want freedom. They say, "Oh, this law is not good," or this product is not good. It doesn't give me the freedom I want. The shaving cream doesn't work, or the razor is not sharp enough, or whatever. They get dissatisfied easily because they're different than matter. Matter doesn't express any dissatisfaction. That is the difference between spirit and matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving at a certain organic development. But such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Well, this is Turing. Have you heard of that name, Turing? Yeah, he's like, in some ways, like the father of the internet or the computer, right? And he actually said that at one point in the near future, the computers will equal or surpass human beings, right? And they will at one point develop spirit. We studied this in the children's class I give. We studied Turing for about 2 or 3 weeks because he's a rascal, a big rascal, and everybody believes him. That at some point, that if there is spirit, it'll be evolved through artificial intelligence, and it'll be equal to a human being. So that's what Ray Kurzweil believes also. And all these people, they believe all that nonsense. And they're working day and night to prove that it's actually a fact. But Prabhupada says, trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. That's the biggest point right there. Matter cannot see or move on its own. There has to be intelligence behind it, right? But yet these so-called big philosophers like Turing, like Kurzweil, like so many, believe that at one point spirit will evolve through combination of matter. In fact, if you look in Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, what does Prabhupada say? What does Krishna say? He says, the demonic conclude that the world is phantasmagoria, meaning like an illusion. There is no cause and effect, no controller, no purpose. Everything is unreal. They say that this cosmic manifestation arises due to chance material actions and reactions. They do not think the world was created by God for a certain purpose. They have their own theory that the world has come about in its own way, and there is no reason to believe that there is a God behind it. For them, there is no difference between matter and spirit, and they do not accept the Supreme Spirit. Everything is matter only, and the whole cosmos is supposed to be a mass of ignorance. According to them, everything is void, and whatever manifestation exists is due to our ignorance and perception. They take it for granted that all manifestation of diversity is a display of ignorance, just as in a dream we may create so many things which actually have no existence. Then, when we are awake, we see that everything is simply a dream. But factually, although the demons say that life is a dream, they are very expert in enjoying this dream. So, this is the demoniac people. This is what they believe. This is what they propound. They preach it in schools. And in this way, they mislead other people. Just because they make a few inventions, people take them to be like God. So the main point here is that knowledge only begins when you accept an authority. It has nothing to do with facts. It has to do with accepting an authority. Then the authority gives you so-called facts. But most of those facts are wrong. But as soon as you accept someone as authority, you accept almost wholeheartedly everything they say as being factual. Just like the Stephen Hawkins. Whenever he gave a lecture, hundreds of people would come to hear his lectures. They thought that he is the modern Einstein. And they thought that, he knows more about the universe than anyone else. And he was actually an idiot. He didn't know anything about the universe. But he's very good with words. Just like Deepak Chopra, another nonsense person, is good with words, right? So he bewilders people with fancy wording, and they think he knows what he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a nonsense person. He's a sense gratifier. So this is a trick people learn when they go to universities. They learn how to trick other people with language. But actually, and you'll see there are many, many scientists that have come up with junk science and got away with it until they are eventually revealed to be cheaters. And then, like for example, this one Korean scientist claimed that he cloned a dog. And it became a very famous thing. And later on, they learned the whole thing was a hoax. But he got into all the journals, all the scientific journals. And it was very embarrassing for the scientists because this guy was a complete hoax. So in that way, and also now you're seeing, the so-called vaccine. Well, are these vaccines working or not working? So there's another doctor that's on the internet. His name is Rosenberg. He says, look, vaccine, what counts is the immune system. He said, for the last 20 years, I've been studying the immune system because I'm an oncologist. I was trained to give, radiation therapy for cancer, And then one day my mother walked into my clinic and she had cancer. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. It's my own mother. I know what, what oncology can do or can't do. But I lost my mother. She died 1 year later after she came into my clinic to be diagnosed for cancer. Then I realized that, I'm wasting, I'm not doing the right thing. I'm not actually helping people. So then for the last 20 years, he says, I've been studying how to improve the immune system of a person. So that's the solution to all these problems. Well, here's a doctor who's, trying to tell the truth. Right? And the truth is, if you have a good immune system, even though you're exposed to all kinds of diseases, even if you get sick, you'll be able to heal it. It'll heal naturally. But if your immune system is down, you can get the best medical treatment in the world. It's not going to help. Yeah. Okay, so then here it's saying that trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. So the Europeans and the Americans invested in hundreds and billions of dollars to build a electronic accelerator on the border between France and Switzerland. I think it's on the Switzerland side. And it's a gigantic, I think it goes for like 20 miles long. And they keep claiming that by acceleration of matter, eventually it turns into spirit. Well, no, by acceleration of energy, it turns into matter. And so they have to prove that they can transform energy into matter. And they call it the God particle. And they claim that they have done it, maybe for a few seconds or so. And they've spent all this money trying to do it, and they're still doing it. So this is what God does. He can take energy and turn it into matter, and he can take matter and turn it into energy. This is what Einstein was talking about. E equals mc squared. Energy equals massed at the velocity of light, and squared, whatever, and it turns into matter. But no, human beings cannot actually do this through their science, but they're doing it in the body every day. You're eating food and it turns into matter. You know, or the plant takes the energy of the sun and turns it into glucose. See, so bodies can do it, but they have to spend all this money and all this time and all these engineers, and they can't actually do it. Turn energy into matter and vice versa. Although Einstein is saying it's possible with his famous E = mc squared. So now it says, therefore it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities. That's the whole point. Turing also said that at a certain point, if there is soul, it'll evolve by artificial intelligence and computer development. You see. So they reject this one statement. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are two different energies. And this conclusion is arrived at by use of intelligence. Now we come to the point that things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user or director of the intelligence. So we went from point 4 about dissatisfaction. Now we're coming to point 5. That is, that things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user of or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. Now this is an extremely important point. He mentioned this way in the beginning also, where he says that in the beginning he said, he can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. Okay? And in the verse it says, Drishyar Buddhi Adibir Drasta. One who sees by intelligence what is seen. Okay? So, intelligence, it says here, gives one direction like a higher authority, and a living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. Okay, so there is our intelligence and there's a superior intelligence. Just like you want to buy a Christmas gift for your kid. So you go to Walmart or you go to on the internet to Amazon, and you're looking around for a Christmas gift, and you say, this is it. I'll buy a train set for my kid. And he can put the train set together and run the train and, be instructive, Or I can get a Lego kit for my kid, or I can, there's some education involved in it, So let's say he gets the train set. He brings it home, and he and the kid set it up. They put the tracks together, and they had some electrical things to do to get the remote control, so you can make it go forward and backwards, and then you have a little bridge over a type of river and this thing, and they set it up in the living room, Christmas Day, and then all of a sudden, they plug in the electricity, and kid goes zzz, and then the train goes forward like this, and it goes zzz, and it stops and goes zzz, and it goes backwards. So now, is there a superior intelligence and dependent intelligence? Yes. The manufacturer of that train set is superior intelligence, right? And the kid who puts it together and then plugs it in and then now is making it work, that is the dependent intelligence, right? So intelligence, as it says here, is the, as it says here, the presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize. Oh no, he says, he can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of personality Godhead. In other words, there are different levels of intelligence. The highest intelligence is Paramatma. And then beyond, and then below that, it's coming, you have the demigods, and then you have human beings, and then you have animals, then you have plants, and you have the fish. But there's intelligence everywhere. The fish figures out, how to eat something, and the bird knows how to make a nest. You ever see bird nests? They're complicated. How did the bird make it? And they're doing it without hands and legs. They just have the beak, right? But yet they're able to do it. And the beaver makes like a dam, and the ants, they make an ant hole, right? And the bees, they make a nest. They make a beehive. These are all complicated constructions, but they have the intelligence, limited intelligence to do it. And they have the superior intelligence of Paramatma that's directing them how to do it, you see. So now we come to the point that things that are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user of or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority. So we have our own intelligence, and then we have higher intelligences, right? And the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. Just like we're building a special garden now, on an Indian plan and the superior intelligence is Chaitanya Sundara's brother. Or no, is he brother? Or, yeah. Yeah, he's giving us the superior intelligence, and we have the dependent intelligence, right? And you're reproducing the same thing that they have in India under the direction of your brother, right? So, this is an example right in front of us, right? There's always going to be the superior intelligence and dependent intelligence. And ultimately, the supreme intelligence is Paramatma, is the source of all knowledge. Right? Sarva Shichaham Hridi Sanirvisto Matak Smriti Jnanam Apahanam Cha. That I am in the heart of every living entity, and from Paramatma comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. That means Paramatma is present everywhere, so everybody's getting some form direction from the superior intelligence of Paramatma. Every living being has this intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority who is present and residing within every individual living being is the super self, or Paramatma. So, this is number 5, right? So we started with, you are a person. Number 2, there's a seer and a seen. Number 3, the seer is spirit and the seen is matter. Number 4, there's another proof that the seer is not matter is that dissatisfaction, right? Matter is never dissatisfied. And number 5, there's superior intelligence and dependent intelligence. Right? At this point in our investigation, we may consider, okay, we'll stop right there now and continue tomorrow. This is extremely important purport. You see how brilliant Prabhupada is and how he's explaining. I mean, if you just had the verse, would you understand all these things? No. You wouldn't understand. We wouldn't understand hardly anything. This explanation is brilliant, and it's absolutely necessary in order to understand this verse. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being, along with the individual soul, and this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. So we would not be able to write a purport like this. With no way is that possible. Okay, we'll stop right there. Well, where's the Srila Prabhupada ki jai?